welcome. Happy Friday. We're back. It's the Patriot Radio News Hour. I'm Joe Jaquin, CEO of the Patriot Trading Group. I hope this day finds you well. It's the best day of the week. Our toll-free number, 800-951-0592. The website keeping us all comfortably disturbed at allamericangold.com. I got to apologize for yesterday. It was a technical malfunction. We had the situation. I'll tell you, I've been doing this a long time. And we've had issues before where we've had to, unfortunately, not be able to do a show. But nothing quite like yesterday. So, we get in and we actually use a phone line. For those of you that don't know, I'm not at the radio studio. I'm not at the studio in Phoenix. I have a studio here in our office in the Deer Valley Airport. And we have a dedicated line that we use to dial in to Phoenix. And yesterday morning I went to call like I do every day, and it was busy. And I was like, that's weird. So I got out my cell phone and I called Ramon, and Ramon's like, it's not busy. And I tried it again, and it was busy. And then I said to Ramon, hey, you try to call me. And he tried to call me, and it was busy. And then both of us started calling other people, and it worked. Like, I could call my cell phone. I could call Arlene. I could call my aunt. I could call anybody I wanted, and it worked just fine.
Can we blame this somehow on the hurricanes?
You know what? I don't know if maybe, I just think they didn't want me on the powers to be didn't want me on the air.
You've rattled some cages,
right?
Sir.
I must have. Because how else could you explain? Because, am I wrong or not? You called a bunch of people, and it worked just fine. We just couldn't call each other. And just that one bum number, was not going to work. But Centrally got out. They fixed whatever it was. They fixed it, and everything's A-okay. But, yeah, it was weird.
It mysteriously fixed itself by the afternoon.
Whatever, the ghost that was in the machine left, and we are back in action. I just never had that happen before. It was quite interesting. A lot of things. We got a new richest man in the world, and it's not Dr. Evil. It just looks like him. Jeff Bezos from Amazon has surpassed Bill Gates as Amazon's dominance of the world continues. He is now the world's richest man. And right on cue, JCPenney's came out with earnings, and it was wow, not good. They are. I think JCPenney's is going the way of Sears. They're both probably going to be done. And it's not just going to be Amazon that finishes them off, but it certainly isn't helping. We had GDP today. We have I shouldn't say it's not official yet. Something I told you several weeks ago is now being widely reported as to who is going to be the new head of the Federal Reserve. So we'll talk about that. We had all kinds of, between yesterday and today, Walgreens announced the closure of 600 stores. Of course, I don't know if you saw CVS now says they want to buy Aetna Insurance. But I guess that's one way to make sure you get the contract if you own them. UPS says, I know Janet Yellen says there's no inflation, but we think there is. They're going to be raising prices by 4.9% starting Christmas Eve. So they're going to let you get your packages off before the holiday, and then after that, UPS is going to be raising prices by 4.9%. We have housing data. Pending home sales came out, and really it's starting to get very, very complicated. Catalonia declared independence this morning. But don't worry, Spain immediately declared their independence not independent. So everything's wonderful. I don't know how that's going to work out. But They voted for independence, and then the Spanish government, they had a vote that said we're the ones that are in charge, not you guys, so we'll have to see how that plays out. And then the last but not least, what is happening, and we're going to really follow the new pricing for Obamacare today, and then rental properties in vacant homes. Yes, rental properties in vacant homes. There's a company out there, they do the biggest of them all. They do an annual report that talks about property vacancies and all of that, and how many people aren't paying the rent. And we'll break it all down for you. It's going to be a fantastic show. When we get back, we're going to start with GDP because it was a good number, bad number. You know, it was, and it's always and lately, isn't that how all the numbers are? It's kind of like it's a good number, yet it's a bad number. It's kind of like new home sales was really good. Pending homes was the worst in 3 years. GDP, the headline number was really good, but consumer spending wasn't very good, and the reason for the headline number wasn't very good. And we'll break all of that stuff down for you. And like I said, we'll get into how many homes are being rented, how many people aren't paying the rent, and how many of them are owned by investors sitting empty.
Give me some time. I'm living in twilight. Oh, telephone line. Give me some time. I'm living in twilight.
800-951-0592. That is our toll-free number. Don't let, man, 2017, it's flying by. October's almost over. We're in the last 2 months of this year. Do not, if you can help it, don't let this pass you by. We are in really the sweet spot when it comes to what we do. Wealth insurance, it's what we do. When it comes to gold, when it comes to silver, this has been the best buying opportunity going all the way back to 2001, and I actually think it's better, in talking to Eric. And what do I mean by that? How much you can buy as far as relative to the spot price. And we've seen it. Remember when gold was $1,900? I don't know. It wasn't there very long, right? But as it was running at $1,700, $1,800, eventually topping out at $1,900, you're paying $2,300, $2,400 for a Liberty or a Saint. And you're $400 and $500 over spot. Silver. Remember when silver was going to 50? Right? I mean, you couldn't get it, hardly get it at all. And when you could, people were paying $7 and $8 over spot on silver. Today, silver eagles are $400 a roll. It's just a little over $3 over spot. If you buy a case, you save $500 a roll or $5 a roll. I mean, a case of silver today is less than $10,000. U.S. $20 Liberties or Saints, you pick it, either one, your choice. $13.20 today. And you're looking at gold right now. Gold's up a few bucks this morning, $1,270. Right? It's really unprecedented in 15, 16 years. Take advantage of it because really you got to look at why is it the sweet spot? It's in the sweet spot because the news that we're going to talk about right now, because this is really what's happening in really the whole entire world, right? They've created all of this money. They don't know what to do with it. Deficits are skyrocketing to try to cover things up. In today's GDP report, this was first look at third quarter GDP. The number came in higher than expected. It hit 3%. So we had 3.1 last quarter, 3% this quarter. The increase was a huge bulge, if you will, in the inventory investment category. And I mean, it was really big, to the point of if without an increase in inventory. In other words, if companies didn't build all this stuff that didn't get sold, the GDP number would have been about 2.2, which would have been a little less than expected. But they had this huge increase in inventories. The trade deficit also shrunk a little bit, so that did help a little. I want to point that out. With those two together, then you're looking at about 2%. They said it was impossible. This was the Commerce Department put it out there, by the way. Impossible to estimate the overall impact of the hurricanes. They said that the number was driven by the huge increase, like we said, in the amount of inventory built. To put it in perspective, this was a better first or second and third quarter than last year. So this is the first time we've seen that, because last summer we did 2.2 and 2.8. This summer, 3.1 and 3. And I'll say my guess is, and I'm just guessing, that by this time next year, because I'll revise it a few more times, it'll probably be a little better. So that's good. But the biggest jump was the increase in the tens of billions of dollars in inventory that added 0.73%. So figure 75 basis points. So 3 would have taken it down to, like I said, 2.5, 2.25, something like that. In the third quarter, the one negative was consumer spending. So the consumer actually spent less, and of course that led, and I was expecting that, because they had a big bump to get that 3.1. Remember, they said everyone bought cars and all that stuff, and I said, that doesn't make any sense, and so this quarter it fell back down, but also spending on residential structures fell 5.2%. Did rise 7%. In the second quarter. Those were kind of the highlights of the GDP, but this is really what it is, right? Everything's very, very confusing, and this is why gold keeps waiting, right? Eric kind of brought it up last week when he was with us, right? We're kind of waiting for that other shoe to drop. And, then you get announcements today like JCPenney's earnings and Walgreens, overshadowed, though, by what Amazon and Google did. Google had a nice report as well. Yesterday, this is a report from yesterday, pending home sale was unchanged in September, but they had, the reason why it was unchanged, a big revision to the August number. Pending home sales now down 3.5% compared to a year ago. So those people that are in the process of closing on a home, closings are down 3.5% year over year. The report said sales were down in the South. Pending home sales were up slightly in the West, in the Northeast. But, of course, in the Northeast, there's not a lot going on there. But really, I think the thing that caught my attention, though, was who's buying the home. And of course, I've been talking about how we've seen something in this housing market that we've never really seen in the United States, which is the homes are being bought almost, well, I shouldn't say almost exclusively, but by Wall Street, right? This is kind of a new phenomenon. We've always had that the small guy, right? Maybe he's trying to build his fortune, as a slumlord, or, we've always had that. But we've never had it to where Wall Street owns hundreds of thousands of properties. And because the amount of people renting homes is starting to really swell, there's a new survey. It was conducted by apartmentlist.com. So you can look it up yourself, apartmentlist.com. Recently found that Americans, despite the historically low unemployment levels, despite the fact that the economy just grew at 3% for the last 2 quarters, a surging stock market, which would both seem to suggest that everything is awesome, are having a very difficult time making ends meet. See, and this is kind of what happens every time we go through one of these recessions, depressions, whatever you like to call it. We've gone to the same card, and we've been doing this really all the way back to 1971, and really didn't do it before then. The only time we really ran deficits before 1971 was war. I mean, that's it. And I guess I will throw out the last part of the Johnson years was they started to spike in a non-war time. But outside of that, this is a new phenomena in the last 50 years. Every time it happened, we lost a few people off the middle class, and we lost a few more and a few more, and then it started a few more and a few more and a few more, right? And now we've got this massive part of the population. I've been talking about it all year, barely trying to hang on. And now, per this survey from Apartment List, 20%, so 1 in 5, 20% of renters admitted they were unable to make their monthly payments on time at least once in the last 3 months. Okay, we're not going back, hey, one time in the last year, 2 years, 3 years, no, just in the last 3 months. It says the data found that nearly 1 in 5 renters were unable to pay their rent in full. They estimated that 3.7 million Americans have experienced an eviction in the last 3 months, which is way higher than I thought it would be. They said that, and they went on and broke it down between apartments and houses, and because it says apartments, but it was everything. So whether you're renting an apartment or renting a house, it really didn't matter based on income. Those below 30,000, they were almost at 30%. 30 to 60,000, they were at just over 15%. And the people making 60,000 or more, they were still 1 in 10. And like I said, this was just in the last 3 months. And it also broke it down by education. I mean, it did all of that stuff. And it really was across the board. It didn't seem to matter. Obviously, it did a little bit. If you're making less than 30,000, you had a much better chance than if you were making more than 60. But even today, even with all of this great news, and you think about 40% of the country is now a renter, right? Well, just under. I guess home ownership's about 62%. Then followed that up with a report from Atom Data Solutions, ATTOM. Okay, so now they once a year, what they do is they list or count all the vacant houses. Okay, so think about it. I don't know how they do it, but apparently they have a way where they go through the records and have it set up where they collect the data on how many vacant houses there are in the entire country. And they used to produce this report. They called it the Zombie Foreclosure Report because, again, this was before Wall Street got involved. And they used to track how many homes were sitting empty, and the bank was kind of, waiting, right, sitting on the property, waiting for it to turn around or whatever they were waiting for. They said that zombie foreclosure. Well, the foreclosure side is declining, right, the zombie foreclosure. There is a huge spike in the amount of vacant properties in the United States. All of them, and I'm going to say all of them. Obviously, it's probably not quite all of them are investor properties. And they went on and said there's 1.54 million vacant homes currently owned by investors right now. And, and I think about the National Association of Realtors talking about the lack of homes for sale. Well, I got 1.5 million of them just sitting empty right now. Patriot Radio News Hour. We'll be back after the break.
This is the Phyllis Schlafly Report, a daily commentary continuing the conservative pro-family legacy of Phyllis Schlafly. Now from the Phyllis Schlafly Center studios, here's Ryan Haidt.
A recent study of top colleges and universities in the United States found that the overwhelming majority of schools do not provide students with the most basic elements of due process. The Foundation for Individual Rights in Education, or FIRE, recently found that nearly 3/4 of America's top 53 universities do not even guarantee students that they will be presumed innocent until proven guilty. FIRE's rating system is based on an analysis of 10 critically important procedural safeguards, including a clearly stated presumption of innocence, the right to impartial fact-finders, and the ability to pose relevant questions to witnesses. Most institutions have one set of standards for adjudicating charges of sexual misconduct and another for all other charges, FIRE explained in their report. 79% of universities received a D or F rating for protecting the due process rights of students accused of sexual misconduct. Incredibly, the story showed that of the 102 policies rated at the 53 schools in the report, not a single policy receives an A grade. In fact, only 2 schools were able to receive a B grade for their policies on sexual and non-sexual misconduct. Well, Laura Dunn, Executive Director of Serve Justice and a legal advocate for victims of sexual assault, challenged some of FIRE's proposed safeguards, shockingly going so far as to question a presumption of innocence for the accused. A presumption of innocence advantages the accused only, and Title IX requires equity, she said. No presumption should be made either way, and schools should engage in an inquisitorial process to determine the truth rather than artificially favor the accused going into it. Well, rape is a serious crime, and any and all allegations of rape should be handled by real police and real prosecutors. Our Fifth Amendment rights should not be taken lightly. Those accused of rape face life-altering consequences, sometimes based on the testimony of only one other person. Disputes about sexual crimes need to be handled properly and fairly by professionals according to established constitutional law.
This has been the Phyllis Schlafly Report from Phyllis Schlafly Eagles. In 2016, the conservative movement lost one of our strongest leaders, but Mrs. Schlafly's work and her voice continue through this radio program, our work in Washington, and the influence you have in your own community. Be part of that legacy at phyllisschlafly.com. We encourage you to bookmark phyllisschlafly.com and join us again for the Phyllis Schlafly Report.
He was backwards.
Welcome back. 800-951-0592. The $20 Liberties and Saints 1320. And I find myself, and I'm not I'm not the biggest Silver fan, and I think all of you know that. But, I also know you got to have some. But, man, I have loved it a lot this year, and today's another one of those days. I mean, Silver has recovered all of its losses from earlier in the morning, but at $16.75, I think you're stealing it. Real close to it. Silver Eagle rolls at $400, 800-951-0592. I apologize. My computer locked up, so I was trying to recite off of memory. So the number was 1.367, 1,368,000. We'll round up 1,368,000 vacant homes in 81 of the 149 metropolitan areas. Okay, so they go and they do all the big ones. Analyzed in the report showed increases in the amount of vacant-owned homes by investors. Chicago, New York, St. Louis, Baltimore, Phoenix led the list. Then they also noted that there's evidence that the ultra-tight inventory environment in some red-hot housing markets is beginning to ease, with vacant property rates nudging higher in markets such as San Jose, San Francisco, L.A., Boston, and Denver. So just throwing it out there, when the prices get so high, and now, of course, when you look at these home sales, kind of like the jobs market today. And again, this is why, when I go back to why gold and silver are in the sweet spot, it's because of things like this. This is something that we haven't seen. This is what I would say is the unintended consequences of what it is that the Federal Reserve has done. Okay, one of the unintended consequences is, right, we've got Wall Street owning millions of properties. I mean, how many do they own? And we're never going to know, because they set up all these little shell companies and all of this other stuff. But if there's almost 1.4 million vacant homes, how many are there? 5 million? 6 million? 7 million? I don't know what the number is. I'd love to know it. And so when you look at home sales today, it used to be home sales almost exclusively, you go back 20 years ago. Definitely go back 30 or 40 years ago. It was because people were actually buying a home, right? It was the American dream. And you had your flippers and you had your slumlords. You had some, but the vast majority was people buying a home. Now we've got a whole different kind of home scene. Right? And then you look at the jobs market, right? And they talk about jobless claims and full employment and all of these things. And again, this isn't what it appears. Right? And we talk about the Phillips curve, right? Why is that broke? And for those of you if you don't know what the Phillips curve is, I'm not going to talk about it today. You can look it up on your own. But all of these numbers really are pointing to something vastly different. And really what it's pointing to is the average American is getting poorer. Right? The average American, now 1 in 5 people who rent are late paying pretty much all the time. Right? I mean, in the last 3 months, they've done it, right? At least once, if not multiple times. And really, my guess is that number's rising. And then you look at, but we're at full employment. We got Wall Street at all-time highs, and we've seen these bubble environments before, because they keep trying to fix the problem using the same thing, which is the debt card. And every time they use the debt card, we lose millions of Americans to poverty. I mean, we still are well over 40 million people on food stamps. That number was 17 million 20 years ago. It's now 40. Social Security Administration broke a record. Actually, they've been breaking records every year, but this one is it's important because it was a milestone. For the very first time, remember, this is another thing I've been telling you about. Another reason why is Joe saying gold and silver are in the sweet spot? Because it's poised to go. And the reason is that I believe it's poised to go, and it's already going. I mean, it started out at 1,052 years ago. Silver was $13. In fiscal 2017, and I like how they use this term. In fiscal 2017, real Social Security Administration spending, as opposed to fake Social Security spending, real Social Security spending topped $1 trillion for the first time, according to the data published by the Treasury Department. So once a month, the Treasury releases kind of a balance sheet, if you will. Hey, here's where we've spent the money. For the first time in history, the Social Security Administration broke the $1 trillion level, bringing the total for 2017 to $1,871 million. And I bring this up because I told you already, we don't even collect $1 trillion with the payroll tax. And that number, right, we know we're going to get a 2% increase in the COLA payments. We know that 10,000 people a day get added to the rolls of Social Security. You start seeing what I'm talking about? $1 trillion becomes $1.2 trillion, becomes $1.5 trillion. You know, we only collect $3 trillion in taxes, and Trump's going to make sure that's less. That was 37 times as much as the Department of State spent during the year, 32 times as much as the Department of Justice spent, 20 times as much as the Department of Homeland Security spent. And fiscal 2017 was also about 76% more than the federal government spent on the Department of Defense and military programs. By the way, that number, just a shade under $600 billion. Let's see, Medicaid's over $1 trillion, Social Security's now over $1 trillion, defense spending $600 billion. Patriot Radio News Hour, the sweet spot continues. The super cycle is here. In 2006, Social Security Administration spent about $600 billion. Today, it broke $1 trillion. By 2026, that number, they're projecting $1.64 trillion. And I'm going to stick, let's use that number. The only department that spent more money than Social Security, Health and Human Services, which is a fancy way of saying Medicare. They spent $1.116 trillion. So they were pretty close. So between the two programs, that's $2.1 trillion. 53% of all government spending is in those two departments. Health and Human Services, Social Security Administration. Third, Defense. $570 billion. Fourth, interest on the debt. Now think about it. Remember where we're at. And think about where it would be if we were at, 4, 5, 6%. At 2%, well, the Fed funds rate's at 1%. But the 10-year note's been at 2% pretty much all year. $456 billion we spent on the interest and the debt. Those four categories now take up the entire amount plus of what the government collected in taxes in 2017. Then you've got Veteran Affairs, Agriculture Department, Education Department, Office of Personnel Management, Transportation Department, other defense civil programs, HUD, Housing and Urban Development, Homeland Security. We didn't pay for any of that yet. Labor Department, Justice Department, State Department, Energy Department, International Assistance, NASA, Interior Department, independent agencies, Commerce Department, the EPA, the Judicial, the National Science Foundation, the Corps of Engineers, the Legislature branch, the Treasury Department itself, the Small Business Administration, Executive Office of the President, Public Defender Services, and, of course, Surface Transportation Board. How about that? Whew. That was another $1 trillion. So according to the government, and by the way, Medicare and Social Security are kind of on the same path. So they're going to go from roughly $2.1 trillion of government spending. 9 years from today, they anticipate both of those numbers will be somewhere between $3.2 to $3.5 trillion. Just in those two programs. And you start asking yourself, well, why I sit here and tell you this is the sweet spot that we've been in, right? Because we've gotten lucky because, and I guess we should thank Janet Yellen, who, by the way, yesterday, well, I do need to get to this. Yesterday, gold was down yesterday because news broke that Janet Yellen was out of the running to be reappointed for her term. And, of course, I already told you weeks ago, Jerome J. Powell, is going to be the new head of the Federal Reserve. Today, the rumor mill is circulating that is where Trump is leaning. Gold was actually down again this morning until that came out because people were talking about John Taylor, the Stanford economist. And, of course, I've been telling you that would be exact opposite of what Trump wants. CNBC actually wrote a really good article about it, saying that Jay Powell is the best person not named Janet Yellen. That what makes Jay Powell good is he's just like Janet Yellen, but his name isn't Janet Yellen. And, of course, Janet Yellen, obviously, a very huge dub. The fact that interest rates are still at 1%. And I think she's right. I think she knows, right? Janet Yellen knows. She knows when she looks at these reports that things are, well, yeah, I know that the report says it's good, like unemployment, but we kind of know why. And I kind of know what's going on with the lack of inventory allegedly in the housing market, and I know all about all these vacant properties out there, and I know all about what's happening with Social Security and Medicare, and I know all about what's going on in all of these pension plans and all of the like. But according to the latest, Donald Trump is now leaning towards Powell, but the source said it's still not decided yet. Trump believes that remember, we talked about this, he wants low rates. So why would he nominate somebody who didn't want low rates? And there's really, of the four people that were under consideration, there's really two people that were for ultra-low rates, Janet Yellen and now Jay Powell, and I think that's who we're going to get. I mean, really, I think I said this last week, or maybe it was earlier this week, they kind of all run together. That it was going to be, I thought it was going to be one of those two. I never really gave any consideration to anybody else, but we'll have to wait and see. I think Gold's going to like that, right? Gold would like either one of those names, where if it had been Warsh or Taylor, gold would have reacted negatively, even though, like I said earlier this week, it really doesn't matter. Doesn't matter who the next Fed chief is, because the deficit's 20-plus trillion, and according to the Social Security Administration, it's just getting started. Patriot Radio News Hour, final segment coming up. Final segment on this Friday. Quick look here at the markets. Gold's up a couple of bucks, $1,269 right now. Silver at $16.74. The Dow is up 22 points. We had I would say a positive GDP number. Unfortunately, not how we wanted to get to 3, but it came in at 3. Pretty much all of the better than average part was they just made too much stuff, right? Which is always kind of the double-edged sword of, okay, we've got too much stuff, and you see it with the automobile companies, right? They keep slowing production and closing plants and all of those things, and that's kind of the worry. The NASDAQ goes up 136. Amazon, we have a new world's richest man. Jeff Bezos passed Bill Gates today as the world's richest man, and he now has an estimated $90 billion. I'm thinking about, wow, that $90 billion. Don't you think Illinois would love to have that, wouldn't they? Right, that would be just enough. He could pay off Puerto Rico's debt and still have, $20 billion. No, not quite $20 billion. He could, figure about $15 billion left over if he paid off Puerto Rico's debt. Jeff Bezos, the world's richest man, with $90 billion. And by the way, just on a side note, because I always love to look at the biggest driver of consumer spending was recreational vehicles. Those guys putting the guy with the Corvette in the garage, or the Porsche that he only drives it on weekends and threatens their kids with death if they steal the car while they're on vacation. That was the biggest driver of consumer spending, and as I said, consumer spending fell in the third quarter from the second quarter. But nonetheless, the Dow's up 22 points. Today's we got a couple of different U.S. Silver Eagles, $400 a roll. $20 Liberties and Saints at $13.20 at 800-951-0592. I hope you take the time to put it away. It's what keeps us right here. We've been doing it for over 22 years now. At 800-951-0592, and we'll be back on Monday. We'll kind of see what plays out. I'm expecting, at least from what Donald says, I think we're going to have an answer by next week on who the next Fed governor is, and whatever happens next, we'll talk all about it. We'll keep you in the know. Don't forget, make sure you go out to allamericangold.com. You can always order online as well. I'll make sure those prices are online as well for you. So now you don't even have to call. That's how easy it is. If you're listening to the show via podcast, or if you're listening to the show late Friday night, early Saturday morning, Sunday, you can go out to allamericangold.com. Along the top, you go to the shopping cart, and you'll be able to place your orders that way, or the old-fashioned way. Yep, you just call us up at 800-951-0592. Arlene is here. She'll take great care of you. Everyone have a great, great weekend. It's going to only be, I heard rumor that we could be in the 80s next week. That's always something positive. Everyone have a great weekend. We'll talk again Monday.